Kalamani. In this program, I would like to introduce Mr. John Sweeney from the University of Hawaii. I understand that you are here on behalf of the UNDP on this program, 2014 Foresight Exchange, and also Milika as well to help us with the translation of our program for the people of Tonga. May I ask John about a little background of yours before we continue with our program?
Sure. First and foremost, Malo, thank you for having us. So I am a researcher at the Hawaii Research Center for Future Studies. I'm also the Deputy Director of the Center for Postnormal Policy and Future Studies. Future Studies is related to the concept of foresight, and so we do long-term planning. We do something called horizon scanning, where we look at possible and preferable aspects of the future. And we work with communities, we work with governments, we consult with a variety of organizations. And so I've been working with the UNDP to help create spaces where communities and governments can discuss the future. And that's what we'll be doing here in Tonga this week.
Before we move on to Milika, maybe it is best for us to also hear from you on the purpose of your coming to Tonga this time.
Okay, so we've come to Tonga as part of the UNDP's Global Center for Public Service Excellence. We were able to establish a connection with the Prime Minister's office here, and they were very interested in the concept of foresight and how it can be used in public service. So we were able to work with them to create a program, and this program includes 2 events. So the first event will be with the public. We have about 100 people, but from what I understand, that number is going to grow. And we'll get different stakeholders from the community leaders to come in, but we also have students, and we'd like people to think about their aspirations, their hopes for Tonga's future. And this is in part to work with the upcoming Small Island Developing States Conference, which will be held in Samoa in September. And we're going to take all of that information and the data we get from that event, and then we're going to have a consultation with the ministers and their CEOs in the government of Tonga. And essentially this will help inform the strategic development framework, the plan for the next 3 years for the government, which they're currently working on, and ultimately to help create more synergy or more feedback, a greater level of conversation, but also dialogue and exchange between the public and the public service.
Thank you, John. Milika. John, I understand that foresight exchange is a new idea, and we sometimes may wonder how the foresight exchange was formulated and why Tonga was chosen, and also the expectation for us to receive from this meeting.
So I think that Tonga was chosen for the first ever Foresight Exchange, in part because of the interest, and specifically on the part of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, but also I had the chance to meet Lord Whakawhenua, the Speaker of the Parliament, who came to Hawaii and participated in a foresight workshop that we did there. So when people ask me what governments are doing foresight and have interest in it, there are many easy answers: Singapore, Korea, Finland. But I think for me, Tonga is now part of that list. I think that Tonga was very interested in finding new ways of creating conversations with the public and in expanding the horizons of thought about the future, about what the future could hold for Tonga. So in some ways, I think Tonga was the perfect choice, and the director of the Global Center for Public Service Excellence has a close relationship with the Prime Minister, and they were able to create the interest, and again, it came from the very top. So they were really excited about having this new venture be launched in Tonga, in part because I think there's a realization that certainly Tonga is facing many challenges for the future. But with that, I believe there are many opportunities as well. And so the theme for the event is moving from small island vulnerability to big ocean prosperity. And we'd like the public to be able to define what that means for Tonga. So prosperity has many connotations. It might mean many things to many different people. And we'd like the public to really create a space where they can voice what that means to them. And so we've created a dynamic program where we're using lots of foresight tools for people to be able to give voice to that future. And then again, that'll directly feed into the event we'll have with the ministers and the CEOs to help find more responsive, more adaptive policies that speak directly to the people's hopes, their aspirations for the future. So I'm definitely excited, and I think Tonga was the perfect choice for the first ever Foresight Exchange. It also is a great way for us to get feedback, because we'd like to continue to do this in other places. So the next event will be held in Rwanda, and we're also going to work with local artists. So we'll be able to showcase their artwork, showcase really to the world how Tonga is at the cutting edge of public service and how foresight is a significant part of that. And this will be presented as part of the Small Island Developing States Conference, but then also will be sort of paraded around the world to show that Tonga now in public service is innovating and using foresight to connect with the public, but also to create more robust and more resilient policies for the future.
Thank you, John. As far as I know, Tonga will be represented at the CITSA meeting in Samoa. How would such event would help Tonga during that very important or high-level meeting in Samoa?
Well, the event in Samoa is designed as a way of showcasing how foresight can be used in public service and how it can be used to develop more robust and more responsive policies. So the event will feature the Honorable Prime Minister, Helen Clark, the Administrator of the UNDP, Jim Dater, who's the Emeritus Director of the Hawaii Research Center for Future Studies. And then we also have a senior official, I believe, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Singapore. And what that event will do is showcase not only to small island developing states, but I think to the world how foresight can have a practical and useful impact in policy development. And so because we're also going to showcase the art pieces that will be developed at the public event as well, I think it can demonstrate how any successful policy or using foresight in public service is a way of connecting with the people and giving the people not a new kind of voice, I think, but an opportunity to say new kinds of things and to really have a new type of conversation about the future. And we heard today from some government officials how excited they were that this would allow for new types of consultations, specifically in developing what we say is more anticipatory policies that don't just solve problems, but look ahead, see the challenges, and they're able to transform those challenges into opportunities. And ultimately, I think that is what the SIDS event will bring. And again, it's about showcasing the kinds of innovation in public service that Tonga is doing now, and hopefully that it will continue to do in the future. And like I said, be at the cutting edge of public service and attempt to create a more robust and more resilient policy development process.
Thank you, John. I understand that tomorrow's program will include people, from all sides of the society. Can you tell us what sort of contribution you would like to see from them during tomorrow's event and throughout the week?
Yes, so tomorrow we've built a very engaging program that will allow different stakeholders to come together and have conversations about their hopes and aspirations for the future. But more specifically, what we really want people to think about are when they imagine this big ocean prosperity future for Tonga. That is a very general statement. So what kind of values would that future need? What kind of behaviors? What are people doing in that future? And then what kinds of structures help to support that? So ultimately, what we see the event tomorrow doing is allowing for collaboration between different voices. And ultimately, the event tomorrow is about taking our assumptions and perceptions about the future, which everyone has, and getting them out in the open and having a conversation about what's important. And just because we look into the future, and sometimes far into the future, doesn't mean we forget about tradition. So ultimately, it's about figuring out what from tradition needs to carry forward into the future. What are those values? How do we maintain community and identity how in times of radical change, and whether it's the arrival of Digicel or the next tsunami or political reforms, what does Tonga do to be prosperous in a variety of futures, and what is our preference for the future for Tonga? And as you know, it's only the people of Tonga that can answer that question. So tomorrow will be about giving them the opportunity and the space to give voice to that. We often say it's not our job as futurists to predict the future, because no one can predict the future. But we can give voice to what we want the future to be, and then the people and government can work together and take steps to ensure that while we don't have complete control over the future, that at least we have a future and a pathway towards the future that we feel good about. So tomorrow I think will be an exciting day, and we're looking forward to having a room full of very eager people to talk about their hopes and their aspirations, and then really to have conversations that at times might be challenging, might seem difficult, but hopefully that will inspire people to carry forward their visions for the future of Tonga, and to do it in a way where they're having, hopefully, I think, new conversations emerge. And so that's what tomorrow will be built. And then again, we'll feed that into the event we're going to do with the government later in the week.
Thank you, John. Before we end our program, John, would you like to add something else?
Sure. So first, I'd like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and to talk about the event. I very much would like to thank the government of Tonga for being very gracious hosts. We've enjoyed our time here very much. And I would like to say that I'm excited about the potential of this event and how the foresightXchange can be not only transformative for Tonga, but I think something that could be carried around the world. And so I've been in Hawaii for many years, and certainly I feel like my heart is in the Pacific, and to feel like Tonga is a place to really kick off this event, I think is quite special. So I'm certainly honored to be here and to be able to participate in the event. Certainly very thankful to the Global Center for Public Service Excellence, to the many efforts of people like Malika who have been working very hard, and the UNDP's support. And so I'm really excited about tomorrow and hopeful for the future of Tonga, and like I said, honored to be able to help make that future more prosperous and help the people of Tonga have a greater voice in that future.
Okay, thank you so much, John, for your time, and also for sharing all those informative information for the public, and especially during your time here in Tonga. And we wish you the best for regarding tomorrow's event. Malo apito mo mea mai, ko au vio laulakai mo mea.